I'm Detective Arthur Hale, and welcome to the Room of Evidence. Here, every tick of the clock hides a story, and every case hides a lie. Tonight, you'll walk beside me through the mist of London, back to the year 1888, to uncover a mystery that made even time stop. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It helps us keep these investigations alive. Now, take a deep breath and listen closely, because maybe you'll notice something I won't. The case is called The Assassin of London's Clock. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. The sky looked like wet iron, and the River Thames carried more secrets than ships. I was halfway through a cup of bad coffee at my desk when a constable burst into my office, dripping from head to toe. "Detective Hale, another one at the clock tower." I stood up, my chair groaning under the weight of another long night. "Another what?" he swallowed. "Another murder, sir. Same time, same note." We arrived at the base of St. Bartholomew's clock tower, an old monument that had long stopped keeping time. The gears inside hadn't turned in years, yet tonight, the air was full of a faint ticking, like the tower itself had come alive again. The victim was a young man, lying face up on the cobblestones, eyes open to the rain. No visible wounds, no blood, just a pocket watch resting on his chest, its hands frozen at 11:52. I crouched down beside him, feeling the damp chill creeping into my coat. "Who found the body?" The constable pointed to a figure near the gate, a woman, shivering under an umbrella. Her name was Eliza Thorne, local journalist known for printing more rumors than truths. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from exhaustion. "I followed the sound," she said softly. "The clock was ticking again. When I looked, he was already there, still." Inside the pocket watch was a small engraving, "To those who forget their time, may it be taken." It wasn't the first time I'd seen that phrase. 2 weeks earlier, another man had been found near Charing Cross Station. Same watch, same time, same message. No witnesses, no leads, only silence. But this time, there was something different, a faint smear of oil on the victim's fingertips. Clock oil. The tower itself loomed above us, ancient and humming. I could hear the faint echo of gears grinding inside. Impossible, since the mechanism had been broken for years. I turned to the constable. "Who's in charge of maintaining this place?" "An old clockmaker, sir. Name's Silas Finch. Lives right behind the tower." We crossed a narrow alley to a small workshop filled with ticking and talking. Hundreds of watches, clocks, and gears lined the shelves, all moving in perfect rhythm, except one. On the back wall, hanging alone, was a giant clock face with no hands. Above it, written in chalk, "Time belongs to no man." An old man looked up from his bench as we entered. He was tall and thin, his eyes magnified by round spectacles. "Detective Hale," he said before I introduced myself. "I wondered when you'd come." I frowned. "You've been expecting me?" He smiled, revealing teeth like old ivory. "When clocks stop at the same time, it's never by accident." I placed the pocket watch on the table. "Recognize it?" He leaned closer. "Of course. It's one of mine." He explained that 10 years ago, he crafted 12 watches identical to this one. They were meant to celebrate the completion of the clock tower, each sold to wealthy patrons who helped fund the project. 11 were sold, Finch said. The 12th was stolen before it was finished. "Stolen by whom?" He shook his head. "A young apprentice of mine. Brilliant, but unstable. Name was Jonas Harker. He disappeared after the fire in my shop. Do you believe he could be responsible for these deaths?" Finch sighed. "Jonas used to say time was a thief, and that he would make it pay." Outside, the rain had turned to mist again. The gas lamps burned low, throwing long shadows across the cobblestones. Eliza Thorne followed me out of the workshop, her notebook clutched tight to her chest. "So what do you think, detective? A madman obsessed with time?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe someone wants us to think that." She tilted her head. "You don't believe the obvious, do you?" I gave a half smile. "If I did, I'd be unemployed." Back at the station, I laid out the evidence on my desk. 2 victims. Both men in their 30s. Both found near old clock landmarks. Both with watches stopped at 11:52. Both connected, in some way, to the Clock Restoration Society, a group of London elites funding public monuments. On the back of the latest victim's business card, there was a faint stamp. CRS time is order. Order. Time. Death. Someone was trying to send a message, and they wanted it to echo. Around 3 in the morning, as I was reviewing my notes, I heard a faint sound outside my window tick, tick, tick. I turned off my lamp and peered into the fog. Across the street, hanging from a lamppost, was a pocket watch. It swung gently in the wind, glowing faintly under the moonlight. And on the face of the watch painted in red the time, 11:52. A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't the watch that scared me. It was the note pinned beneath it. Next, the man who watches time. And I realized, they meant me. Sleep wasn't an option that night. I kept staring at the watch hanging from my window, the red numbers glowing faintly under the moonlight. 11:52. The same cursed time. The time when everything stopped. By morning, the fog had swallowed half the city. London felt heavier, slower, as if time itself had thickened in the air. The constables removed the watch before sunrise, but the image burned into my thoughts. The killer wasn't warning me. He was playing with me. I went back to St. Bartholomew's clock tower. Workers were already cleaning the crime scene, scrubbing bloodless stones, and trying to pretend nothing had happened. But something had. Something still was. Eliza Thorne appeared again, camera hanging from her neck, notepad in hand. "You look tired, detective. Sleep's a luxury," I muttered. She grinned. "Then we both can't afford it." Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp. She wasn't just chasing a headline, she wanted truth. I showed her the note. Next, the man who watches time. Her brow furrowed. "You think it means you?" "I don't think," I said. "I know." Inside the tower, the gears and cogs were still. Dust floated in the sunlight like drifting ghosts, but the faint smell of oil and burning lingered. I ran my fingers along the wall and felt it, a groove, shallow but deliberate. Someone had carved something into the stone. A series of numbers, 1268. Coordinates, a date, a clue. Eliza leaned closer. Could it be a combination? Like for a safe? Maybe. Or maybe a message meant for someone who understands clocks. She smiled faintly. "Then that's you, isn't it?" I took the markings back to Silas Finch, the old clockmaker. He stared at them for a long moment before whispering, "Those aren't numbers, detective. They're positions. Clock positions." He grabbed a chalk and drew a clock face on the workbench. 12, 6, 8. The hands point here, here, and here. He connected the dots, and it formed a triangle. "What does it mean?" I asked. He looked at me gravely. "It's a map of London. These points mark the oldest clock structures in the city." I leaned closer. "The tower, Charing Cross Station, and the third?" He hesitated. "The Grand Horologium under Westminster Bridge." "The what?" "A hidden chamber," he said, "built beneath the bridge in 1812, meant to house the master clock that once regulated the city's railways. It was sealed after a fire, another secret buried under ash." That evening, I went to the Westminster Bridge alone. The fog rolled across the water like slow smoke, and the river's reflection shimmered with faint light. Down by the lower arches, a rusty metal gate marked the entrance to an old maintenance tunnel. I picked the lock and stepped inside. The air was damp and cold. My footsteps echoed against the stone. At the end of the tunnel, a large iron door waited, and right in the center, etched deep into the metal, was the same engraving from the watches. "To those who forget their time, may it be taken." I pushed the door open. The room beyond was massive, a hidden workshop filled with clocks of every kind. Pocket watches, tower gears, broken pendulums, all arranged like a shrine to time itself. In the middle stood a grand brass mechanism, shaped like the inner heart of a clock tower. It was still running, ticking, and on the floor beneath it, another body. This one was different, older, male, dressed in a black work apron. Oil stains covered his hands. His face was calm, almost peaceful, as if he'd fallen asleep mid-work. On the wall behind him, written in soot, were the words, "You were late." I checked the man's papers. Name, Silas Finch. My blood ran cold. He'd been killed not long after I left his workshop, meaning someone had been watching me. Footsteps echoed behind me. I spun, gun drawn. Eliza stood there, holding her camera, trembling. "I followed you," she said softly. "I knew you'd find something. You shouldn't be here." She ignored me, snapping a photo of the wall. Then she pointed at the main mechanism. "Look, it's counting down, turn." She was right. Inside the machine, a series of gears and levers were moving backward, and in the center, a clock face turning against time. At its heart, a single word burned faintly in red light. Harker. Jonas Harker, the missing apprentice. The man Finch told me vanished years ago. But why now? Why return? Eliza whispered. "If this thing is counting down, what happens when it reaches zero?" I studied the gears, some connected to the river's water gates, others to electrical wiring running beneath the city. "If this device triggered something larger, then London's about to find out," I said grimly. I shut the machine down the only way I could, by cutting its main spring. The ticking slowed, and then stopped. Silence. But in that silence, I heard something new. A faint, rhythmic knocking from inside the walls. Eliza gasped. "What is that?" I placed my ear against the cold metal. "It's another clock." The sound came from deeper underground, behind a second wall. Someone had built another layer to this chamber, one that didn't exist on any blueprint. We searched for an entrance and found a narrow hatch hidden under a broken crate. I pulled it open, and a gust of cold air rose like a breath from the earth. A narrow staircase spiraled downward, carved from stone. Eliza hesitated. "Do we really have to go down there?" I gave a dry laugh. "We're too deep to stop now." She raised her camera. "Then lead the way, detective." As we descended, the air grew heavier. The smell of oil gave way to something older: dust, rust, and rot. The stairs ended in a small chamber lit by flickering candles, and on the far wall, hanging like a relic, was a massive clock face identical to the one above the city. Its hands moved backward, slow and deliberate, and beneath it, on a stone table, lay dozens of pocket watches, all engraved with names. Names of people. I stepped closer. Some I recognized the victims, but one stopped me cold. Arthur Hale. My own name. For a long moment, I just stood there staring at my name carved into the cold brass of that pocket watch. Arthur Hale. Same handwriting, same precision, same curse. Eliza whispered behind me. "Arthur, what does that mean?" I wanted to answer, but my voice wouldn't move. Every instinct told me this wasn't just a list, it was a ledger of death. Each name belonged to someone who'd already died. If mine was here, then I wasn't investigating this case anymore. I was inside it. Eliza reached toward the table. "Wait," I warned. But too late. She picked up one of the watches. It clicked open on its own. The second hand began to move backward. Tick, tick, tick. The air around us shifted colder, heavier. The great clock above our heads began to groan, its gears grinding in reverse. And from somewhere in the dark, a voice echoed through the chamber. "You're late, Arthur." The voice was calm, deep, and familiar. I turned slowly. A shadow stood by the stone staircase, tall, lean, wearing a long black coat. In one hand, he held a lantern. In the other, a silver watch, glowing faintly. He stepped into the light, and for the first time, I saw his face. Jonas Harker. He looked older than the records described. The fire had left faint scars across his cheeks, and his eyes shimmered with something between madness and sorrow. "You've been following the wrong trail," he said quietly. "I never wanted to kill anyone. I only wanted them to remember." I raised my revolver. "Then why the bodies, Harker? Why the watches?" He smiled, thin and sharp. "Because they forgot. All of them. Every man who stood beneath the tower when it was built. They swore to protect time itself. But greed made them thieves. They turned my invention into their own." "What invention?" He gestured around us. "The temporal mechanism. The machine that regulates time in the city. I built it, every gear, every spring. It was meant to make all clocks in London run in perfect harmony. But they used it to manipulate train schedules, stock markets, to own time." He stepped close, eyes burning. "They broke the rhythm, Arthur. And when you break time, it breaks back." Eliza snapped a photo, the flash lighting the chamber. Harker flinched, then laughed softly. "You still think this is about murder? No, this is about restoration. Every death resets a clock. Each name returned what was stolen." He turned the silver watch in his hand. One name left. One final correction. I realized then my name wasn't just decoration. It was the last entry. You want me dead, I said evenly. He tilted his head. Not dead. Balanced. Before I could react, the ticking grew louder, 1,000 invisible clocks vibrating in the walls, in the floor, in the air itself. The hands of the great clock above us began to spin faster, faster, until they blurred into a golden circle. The wind howled through the chamber, scattering papers and dust. Eliza screamed as the ground trembled. I lunged forward, trying to grab the watch from Harker's hand, but he moved like he'd already seen me do it. He twisted my wrist aside, whispering, "You can't stop what's already written." Then, with a motion too fast to see, he threw the watch into the gears of the massive clock. The entire mechanism shuddered. Sparks exploded from the brass cogs. The hand stopped spinning and reversed direction again, slower this time. The air felt wrong. Eliza stumbled back, clutching her camera. "Arthur, what's happening?" I said, watching as the room seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with each tick. Time is folding. In front of us, a faint shimmer appeared like heat rising from stone, but colder. Inside it, ghostly images flickered, people walking, laughing, arguing, moments from the past, replaying like broken film. And among them, I saw myself, younger, at my desk, writing a report I hadn't yet written. Harker stood in the center of it all, arms spread. "Do you see, Arthur? Time isn't linear. It's a loop, and we are the gears." The illusions grew clearer. I saw Silas Finch alive again, building clocks with his young apprentice. I saw the first victim shaking hands with investors at the tower's grand opening. I saw the clock fire, the one that destroyed Finch's workshop, and in that burning glow, I saw Harker saving someone from the flames, someone with a familiar face. Me. I staggered back. "That's impossible." Harker smiled sadly. "You don't remember. You were there that night. You pulled me from the fire. You said time could be fixed, but you forgot, just like they did." My pulse pounded. "Why would I forget?" "Because Finch made you forget. He thought it would protect you, to erase the memory of the experiment." He pointed toward the massive clock. "That mechanism is powered by memory. It uses the echoes of moments to keep the world aligned. Every time a piece goes missing, the system compensates by taking something, or someone." The air buzzed with static. The shimmer thickened, wrapping around us like liquid glass. Harker looked at me with something like pity. "You can still end this, Arthur. Stop the machine. Let time rest." I aimed my revolver again. "You first." He didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped backward into the shimmer. His body rippled, the light bending around him. Before he vanished completely, he said one last thing. "You'll understand when the clock strikes 12. The shimmer collapsed, the light snapped, and the silence returned. Only the ticking remained steady, precise, relentless. Eliza fell to her knees, shaking. "Arthur, he's gone." I lowered the gun, still hearing his words echo in my skull. "Gone. Or maybe not." I turned toward the grand clock again. The gears had stopped, but the second hand, the smallest one, was still moving. Tick, tick, tick. It was heading toward 12 o'clock. I checked my own watch. It matched. Every clock in the chamber matched. Every one of them was counting up to something. "Let's get out of here," Eliza said. Before it, the floor shook violently. Pieces of the ceiling fell, candles snuffed out by the gust. The central clock blazed with light, flooding the chamber in gold and shadow. I grabbed Eliza's arm, pulling her toward the stairs, but the door above us slammed shut. The gears screamed. The ticking merged into one solid, deafening sound. Tick, then silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in the chamber. I was standing on the street. Morning light, birds, the sound of carriages. London looked untouched, peaceful. Eliza was beside me, pale and breathless. "What just happened?" she whispered. I looked up. St. Bartholomew's clock tower stood tall above us. Its hands pointed to 12 o'clock, perfectly aligned, and for the first time in decades, it was ticking again. London had never looked so calm. The fog had lifted, the streets were dry, and the people walked like time had forgiven them. But something was wrong, too still, too quiet. I checked my pocket watch again. The hands had stopped. 12 o'clock. Exactly the same as every other clock in the city. Eliza stood beside me, her hair tousled, her clothes covered in dust from the collapse underground. "Arthur," she said softly, "did we stop it?" I wanted to say yes, but the truth clung to my throat like smoke. "No," I said finally. "We didn't stop it. We just changed it. We made our way back to the station, where the morning papers were already being printed. Front page. Mysterious light beneath Westminster Bridge. Locals report earth tremor. No mention of Finch. No mention of Harker. No mention of the dead. Just another story buried by bureaucracy." Eliza tossed the paper on my desk. "They'll never believe it." "They don't have to," I said. "They just have to keep time." I went through the evidence again. The watches, the notes, the victims. Everything pointed to Harker, yet part of me refused to believe he was the villain. He was angry, yes. Obsessed, yes. But there was something else in his eyes. Grief. Grief for the machine he built, for the city that twisted it, for the time that kept moving without him. And then I noticed something I'd missed before. On one of the pocket watches, the one found on Finch's body, there was an engraving so faint it looked like a scratch. I held it under the lamplight and squinted. It wasn't a mark. It was a word. Forgive. I felt the hair on my arms rise. Every other watch had carried a curse, a threat. This one carried mercy. But why? Who was Finch asking forgiveness from? Harker? Or me? Eliza sat across from me, eyes tired but alert. "You're thinking too loudly again," she said. I chuckled softly. "Bad habit. Tell me what you see." I handed her the watch. "This one's different. Someone tried to stop the pattern. Maybe Finch realized what he'd unleashed. Or maybe," she said, turning the watch over in her hands, "someone else did." I frowned. "Who?" She looked straight at me. "You said you saw yourself in the chamber. What if it wasn't a vision? What if the clock didn't just control time, it looped it?" Her words sank into me like a slow poison. If she was right, then everything that happened, every clue, every death was repeating itself, waiting for the next cycle to begin. And maybe the reason my name was on that final watch wasn't because I was next. Maybe it was because I already had been. The thought chilled me more than the fog ever could. That night, I walked through the streets alone. London shimmered under the gaslights, beautiful, haunting, timeless. I passed a row of shop windows, and in one reflection, I saw something that froze my breath. A figure in a long black coat, standing in the middle of the street, watching me. I turned around. No one there, just the faint echo of ticking, fading into the rain. Back in my apartment, I poured a glass of whiskey and sat by the window. Outside, the city's clocks were still frozen at 12. The only sound was the rhythmic drip of water from the eaves, steady, like a second hand keeping time in secret. Eliza's words replayed in my head. What if the clock didn't stop? What if it started over? I looked at the pocket watch on my table, the one with the word forgive. Its lid was open, and now, somehow, its hands were moving again. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each sound echoed through the room, louder than it should. I leaned closer. Inside the glass, a faint reflection moved, not my face, but another man's. Jonas Harker. His mouth moved, but the sound was a whisper in my mind. "You can't change time, Arthur. You can only choose what it takes." The light in the room flickered. The air turned cold. Then the watch stopped. At 11:52. The same cursed minute. The same frozen moment. The one that started it all. I rushed to the window. Every clock in London had started again. Bells ringing. Gears turning. The city alive with time's roar. But they weren't striking noon anymore. They were all striking 11:52. The streets filled with confusion. Shopkeepers looked at their watches. Carriages stopped mid-road. Children pointed at the sky where the great clock faces glowed faintly red. Time wasn't broken. It was repeating. And somewhere out there in the alleys, in the fog, in the heartbeat of the city, I knew he was watching again. Whether it was Jonas Harker, or Finch's ghost, or time itself, I couldn't tell anymore. Eliza found me on the bridge hours later. "You feel it too, don't you?" she said quietly. I nodded. "The city's heartbeat," she shivered. "Do we tell them?" I looked out at the river, the reflection of the clock tower trembling in the water. Would they even believe us? She smiled faintly. Then what do we do? I turned to her. We wait. For what? For the next tick. The wind blew across the bridge, carrying with it the faint sound of a watch snapping shut. I looked down. My own pocket watch had closed on its own, and on the lid, freshly engraved where none had been before, were 2 words, "Your turn." I smiled, despite the chill. Maybe this was how it ended. Maybe this was how it always ended. But as I slipped the watch back into my coat, I looked straight into the camera, into you. "Tell me then," I said softly. "You've seen every clue. You've heard every lie. You've followed me through every shadow of the scene." I paused, the ticking echoing faintly. "So who do you think killed time?" I held up the watch one last time. The face glowed faintly. 11:52, frozen forever. "The answer," said with a faint smirk, "is waiting below this video."